Imagine this. A foreign army invades your land, defeats your king, and places its own ruler on the throne. You would expect everything to change: the language, the culture, the laws, even the identity of the country itself. And in the year 1066, that is exactly what seemed possible. William, Duke of Normandy, crossed the English Channel with a powerful Norman army. After defeating King Harold II at the Battle of Hastings, he became William the Conqueror, King of England. But here is the twist. England did not become a French colony, and English did not disappear. For a time, French became the language of kings, nobles, courts, and government. If you had power, you probably spoke French. But ordinary people, farmers, workers, traders, and families, continued speaking English in their homes, villages, and markets. Over generations, the two languages began to mix. French gave English thousands of new words, especially in law, food, politics, and culture. But English remained the language of the people. So instead of replacing English, the Norman conquest transformed it. England stayed England, but changed forever. And that is why, nearly 1,000 years later, English survived, evolved, and became one of the most powerful languages in the world. Welcome back, history buffs. Today we're diving into one of the most important turning points in English history, the Norman conquest of 1066. That year, England was invaded by William, Duke of Normandy, better known today as William the Conqueror. He came from Normandy, a powerful region in what is now northern France. After crossing the English Channel, William faced the Anglo-Saxon king, Harold II, at the Battle of Hastings. Harold was defeated, and William claimed the English throne. But this raises a fascinating question. If the Normans came from France and conquered England, why didn't England simply become a French colony? Why didn't it adopt a French flag, French identity, and French customs completely? And even more interesting, why didn't the English people start speaking French? The answer is that the Norman conquest changed England deeply, but it did not erase it. For centuries, French became the language of kings, nobles, courts, and government. But ordinary people continued speaking Old English in villages, farms, and towns. Over time, the two worlds mixed. French words entered English, especially in law, food, power, and culture. But the English language survived, transformed, not replaced. So, 1066 didn't turn England into France. Instead, it created something new, the foundation of Middle English, and eventually the English we know today. Before we get to the big questions, let's take a moment to set the stage. William the Conqueror, a man with deep Viking roots, ruled the Duchy of Normandy. Normandy was a region in what is now northern France, but don't mistake it for the French of modern times. While the Normans spoke French, they were a unique people, a mix of Norse and Frankish cultures. They had been in France for centuries, and their identity was far from the uniform, united France that we recognize today. Now, why did William choose to invade England in 1066? Well, it wasn't about colonization in the way we might think of it today. William's ambitions were more personal and politically motivated. You see, William's claim to the English throne came from a promise made by the previous king, Edward the Confessor. Edward had supposedly promised that William would inherit the throne after his death. But when Edward passed away, Harold II was crowned King of England instead, creating a conflict that would lead to one of the most famous battles in history. William, believing that Harold had broken his oath, set his sights on England to claim what he believed was his birthright. He didn't just want to conquer. He wanted to take what was promised to him. Now let's answer the first question. Why didn't England become a colony of France? At first, it seems like it should have. In 1066, William of Normandy crossed the English Channel with an army, defeated King Harold at the Battle of Hastings, and took the English throne. He was a French-speaking duke from Normandy, and after his victory, many Norman nobles were given land, castles, and positions of power across England. But England did not become a colony of France, because William did not conquer it on behalf of the French king. He conquered it for himself. That is an important difference. William was Duke of Normandy, but once he became King of England, England remained a separate kingdom, with its own crown, laws, landholding system, and political identity. It was not absorbed into France. It was not ruled as a province of France. It was ruled by William as King of England. William and his followers did not come to erase everything that already existed. They took control of the top levels of power, but they also used many of the systems already in place. Anglo-Saxon England already had strong royal administration, local courts, taxes, sheriffs, and organized land records. William understood that these structures were useful, so instead of destroying them completely, he adapted them to serve Norman rule. Yes, there were dramatic changes. Much of the Anglo-Saxon aristocracy lost its land. Norman lords built castles, controlled estates, and dominated the government. French became the language of the elite. But for ordinary people, life did not instantly become French. Farmers still worked the land. Villages still spoke English. Local customs continued. The deeper culture of the population remained in place. This is why England became something different from a colony. It became a kingdom ruled by a foreign elite, but rooted in an older English society. The Normans sat at the top, but they governed a land whose people, language, and traditions did not disappear. Over time, the Normans themselves changed too. They did not remain purely separate outsiders forever. They married into English families, lived on English land, and became tied to the kingdom they ruled. So England did not become a French colony, because the conquest was not a French national takeover. It was a dynastic conquest. William became King of England, not governor of a French province. And instead of England becoming France, something more complex happened. Norman and Anglo-Saxon worlds fused together, creating a new England.
Let's talk about language, because this is where things get interesting. French was the language of the court, the church, and the nobility in post-conquest England. For centuries, the Anglo-Norman elite spoke French, while the common English people spoke Old English. You might think this would lead to a complete shift to French as the dominant language, but instead something quite different happened. While the elite class spoke French, English was never completely erased. Why? First, because Old English had deep roots in the common people. It was the language of daily life, of family, of work, and of culture. Despite the Norman conquest, English was too deeply ingrained in the identity of the people to be completely displaced. But also, Old English itself wasn't as pure as we might think. It had already absorbed words from Old Norse, thanks to the Viking invasions centuries earlier. So, when the Normans arrived, the language didn't have to make a radical shift to include French influences. It already had experience integrating new words from other languages. Over time, what we see is a fusion of these two languages, Old English and Old French, which created Middle English. And this blending is what gave rise to the English language we know today. Instead of replacing Old English, French became a huge influence on it, particularly in the areas of law, government, and the arts. Words like court, council, crown, parliament, and many others all come from French. The Legacy of the Norman Conquest, 1500 to 1700. Narration. Now we come to a crucial point. Why did the English language survive when French didn't dominate? Part of it comes down to how the Anglo-Saxons and Normans interacted. While the English people didn't speak French, they didn't resist the Normans in the way that a modern colony might resist its colonizers. Instead, the Normans integrated into the existing social and political fabric, blending in with the local customs and laws. The Normans ruled, yes, but they didn't try to erase the identity of the people they ruled. Over time, the Anglo-Saxon nobility, who had lost power after the conquest, began to intermingle with the Normans. Their children spoke a blend of both languages, and the two cultures began to merge. As the centuries went on, the influence of French on English grew, but English itself remained the language of the people.
So, why didn't England become a French colony, and why didn't English disappear in favor of French? The answer lies in the nature of the Norman conquest itself. The conquest of 1066 was not colonization in the modern sense. The Normans did not cross the Channel to turn England into a province of France, or to create an entirely new French society on English soil. William of Normandy came to claim the English throne. He wanted to rule England as its king, not govern it as a colony of another kingdom. That distinction matters. England remained a separate kingdom, with its own crown, its own lands, and many of its existing institutions still in place. The Normans took control of the top levels of society. They became the new aristocracy, controlled much of the land, built castles, and brought French-speaking culture into the court, the church, and the legal system. But beneath that ruling class, the English population remained. Ordinary people continued to live in their villages, work the land, raise families, tell stories, and speak their language. Old English survived because it was deeply rooted in everyday life. It belonged to the people, and no ruling elite could simply erase that overnight. But English did not survive unchanged. Over time, it absorbed thousands of French words, especially in law, government, religion, art, and high culture. Instead of being replaced, English transformed. Old English and Old French blended together, creating Middle English, the bridge between the Anglo-Saxon world and the English we speak today. And that is why English remained dominant in England. The Norman conquest changed England forever, but it did not make England French. It created something more complex, a society shaped by both Norman power and English resilience. So the story of English is not a story of disappearance. It is a story of survival, adaptation, and fusion. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it. See you next time, and stay curious.